Hello again, and welcome to part 2 of my personal testimony. In part 1, I talked about the wilderness years and the bad boy that I was, and can still be today if I'm not careful. Thankfully, with Christ living in me, I don't have to live like that today. This section is called From Rags to Riches. After I had got myself clean and sober, came out of hospital, I worked initially in the field of homelessness, running hostels for people who had nowhere to live. A lot of experience of that. I'd been there myself. I did that for about 2 years. When one of the chairman of the trustees actually said to me, "Hey Peter, why is it you haven't got any real education? Why don't you go off to the local university and take some advice, get some qualifications to help you in the future?" I took their advice. Excuse me, 1 second. Sorry, I have to plug my computer in. I don't want it dying halfway through this. I took their advice. And because I had no educational qualifications, they made me take an IQ test. My IQ was found to be very high. And I mean very high. It showed I had an intelligence quotient of 137, which, according to them, put me in the top 2% of intellects in the world. So they willingly welcomed me into their university. And I did a master's degree in social sciences to start with, specializing in sociology, economics, psychology, management. I got a distinction in that, and I was helped by a particular professor who suggested I should go on and take a doctorate. Now, I was fortunate at the time that when I did my doctorate, the big universities, the best universities in the world, I would argue, were being criticized for not taking ordinary people like me, but mostly upper-class, rich kids. I got accepted, and I did a doctorate initially in psychology. And when you come out of a place like Oxford, you've got a doctorate. Employers queue up to employ you. And I was selective. I actually chose to go and work for CocaCola and was given a senior position and a very large salary with benefits working for them. I did this for about 18 months. And then I suddenly realized that I had the capability of doing what Coca-Cola was paying other consultants to do. And not only could I do it, I knew I could do it better. So I left Coke and I set up my own consulting practice. It was a bit risky, but that's what God told me to do. Now, by now I was married. I had young children. I had a wife who was a Catholic. Now, I wasn't born a Catholic, but because I had a wife who was a Catholic and I was a respectable member of society, I used to go to Mass on a Sunday. And the priest was always pleased to see 1/10 of my tithes because I was earning a serious amount of money. My practice flourished, absolutely flourished, on the back of me writing some books, having those books acclaimed, and seen to be an expert in my field, the field of human behavior. And I was consulting all over the world. I can say hand on heart that I have been to every continent of the world, with the exception of South America, where I've never been. But I worked a lot in the US, across Europe, Japan, the Far East, Hong Kong, Australia, Bangkok, mostly teaching and consulting about issues to do with human behavior and how to improve performance in organizations. This was so successful. My arrogance and my pride once made me turn to my wife, who asked me about a piece of work that had been offered to me. And I said to her, I don't get out of bed unless they pay me $3,000 a day. That was the arrogance I had. We bought a lovely home. We could afford to have our kids privately educated. We had new cars. In fact, I've always had a problem with cars, and when I had the money, I used to change my car about every 6 months for another new one. I would get people, even though I didn't live in London, to travel up from London, Savile Row, the best tailors, arguably in the world, to my home to measure me up for half a dozen suits at a time, and shirts and shoes that were handmade. So I was traveling all over the world, working all hours God gave me, and what belief I'd had in God had been replenished by a belief in the idol of money. Now I was after my first million and seeking more millions to follow. I grew the practice. I took on people, and they helped me achieve my goals. Near the latter end of 20 years or more of doing this, having every material possession you could possibly wish for, including multiple homes. We had a home, our own home. We had which we had built for ourselves, designed myself and built. We had a home in Scotland, and we had an apartment in London as well. I had all these material things, and somewhere deep inside of me, there was a kind of a blackness. It was kind of like a hole. No matter what I did, no matter how I spent my money, I could never fill it. I could be happy for a few minutes. I'd buy myself a new watch, and I was happy for a few hours. But that faded, and the black hole was still there. Something was missing, and I didn't know what it was. And my ex-wife suggested that I should go to a program that was being run called the Alpha Course, which was essentially, when I looked at it, an introduction to Jesus Christ. Now, at first, I was offended. I said to her, me? I go to Mass every week. I give thousands to the church. Why? I must be a Christian. Why do I need that? And she said, I don't know. I just thought you might benefit from it. It was on a Tuesday night, I remember, 7:30. And I looked at my diary and I realised I had some vacant time, and I thought, yeah, I'll go, because there's nothing I like more than a good argument. See, I'm a rational thinker. I can think fast, and I can come out with some smart-ass answers to people's questions. So I went. And then it happened. On the very first night, we were in a group of about 12. And we watched a video by a guy named Nicky Gumbel, who talked about the love of Christ. And during it, he asked us to say what I now know as the sinner's prayer. I found myself saying it. But, when Nicky Rice gave us time to think about particular sins, I didn't have enough time. I had so many sins that I needed to confess. I didn't have enough time, but we finished. And I walked home fairly quietly and knowing something had happened, but not being sure. The next day, I was to find out what had happened. I'll come to that in the third part, which I'm calling Coming Home. God's grace, it isn't something that just comes once or is a one-off. God has a plan for all of us, for all of our lives. And he was certainly working it out on mine. So I'll see you soon for the final part. Bye-bye.